This story is absolutely funny for a really stupid reason, but just bear with me. First, Vox is accused of stealing intellectual property from a journalist Danny Gold. Now, I know Danny, I worked with him at Vice. Now, I don't know him super well or anything, but we've hung out, we worked together. Danny apparently had an idea for a show. Vox turned it down. Later, and Vox is not Fox, Vox, Vox, later then took basically the entire premise of his pitch, ran with it, and didn't use him. That's like essentially theft of intellectual property. This happens all the time in journalism. And I got to say, it's quite funny when you see these like super goody two shoes moral policing websites like Vox, who turn out to be, I don't know, corporate fiends, I guess. But this happens all the time. What happens, a journalist will be told like, hey, why don't you pitch us some stories and we'll see if we want to hire you. And you'll say, hey, I got a bunch of stories like this. And they'll go, no, we don't want to do those stories. Thanks for your time. And then they'll immediately take those ideas to a different producer who they already have on staff and say, you do it. That's what it seems actually happened here. What makes this story really funny is another story about Vox stealing intellectual property that I'll get to in a second. First, let's see what happened. Journalist accuses Vox of stealing intellectual property for Netflix show, and he's got the receipts. They say, Vox Media reportedly stole the IP from documentary producer Danny Gold for an episode of its Netflix show Explained, Gold tweeted Wednesday. Explained is a show produced by Vox and aired on Netflix. It aims to speak about various issues that affect people's lives. Gold said he pitched an episode idea for the show in 2018 and later discovered the exact same scenario was used for an episode that aired in 2019. The episode aired after his idea was given a pass by Vox. I believe this is evidence that Vox stole the intellectual property, and immediately too. I'll add something else to this, but listen. When you produce a show, it could take months, and then to get it to air could take months. So if he pitched in 2018 and it aired in 2019, it sounds like they immediately ran to the bank like, we got it, even though they told him they didn't want it. But let's move on. Screenshots tweeted by Gold show his pitch, which was sent to Vox on January 22nd, 2018. Gold's idea was to air an episode called The Next Pandemic. The documentary producer included potential interviewees, such as philanthropist Bill Gates. We can see this tweet from Danny. He says, hi to the staff. I'd love an explanation because it seems like you ripped me off and stole my pitch for Explained. I sent you this episode treatment in 2018 called The Next Pandemic. You passed. And now I see you did an episode in November called The Next Pandemic. You know what's really amazing about this story is how brazen Vox is with this. Because they had to have known Danny would see it. I mean, Danny's, he works in this industry. He watches these documentaries. He pitched the story. They must have known they really did not care. I'll tell you what, Vox is, I believe, partially or wholly owned. I think NBC invested $200 million. I don't know how much they own. But yeah, NBC, $200 million stakes. You know what happens? These fat cats at companies like Vox pretend to be all about doing right by people, but they screw over the little guy any chance they get. Any chance they get. And they know that they have all of the money in the world so that Danny can't do anything about it. Fortunately for Danny, there is the court of public opinion. And when Danny posted a link to the email, a screenshot showing he literally said, check this out. He said, wow, crazy. My first suggested interview in the treatment was Bill Gates. The first interview I see mentioned in the IMDb for this piece is Bill Gates. Wild coincidence or Vox.com ripping off a freelancer's work. In my opinion, they're ripping him off and they don't care. Now, first and foremost, one of the reasons I'm doing this segments is not about politics or anything like that. It's about the fact that I will not stand by as these major corporations rip off indies. Listen, I have faced the brunt of the fake news smears from major corporations that are trying to shut me down. Vox gets this sweetheart deal with YouTube, and then they get to run their insane stories and accusations that hurt my channel. Nah, homie, don't play that. So if Danny Gold is also going to be ripped off by them, I absolutely am going to call him out because Vox is, well, dare I say it, they're evil. Guess what? They steal from other people too. Let me show you the next story. This is where it gets funny. It's a stupid pun, but just bear with me. They say after passing on the idea, Vox reportedly used Gold's episode plan and aired it in 2019 without notifying him or giving him any compensation or credit for that matter. The episode was titled The Next Pandemic, which was the name of Gold's pitch. The episode's description on IMDb includes a note that Gates is one of the people interviewed. Now, I'll tell you this. It's entirely possible, and it's really annoying when this happens. Let's say I have a document. I want to do an episode called, what do I got here? I got watermelon brand sparkling water. Watermelon flavored, not branded. Watermelon sparkling water right in front of me. Okay. Let's say I have, here's something I want to do. Watermelon sparkling water. Then a week later, you invite someone in and they say the same thing. I want to do a show called Watermelon Sparkling Water. And then you're like, oh, we already have that ready to go. They could accuse you of saying you're lying, you're stealing my pitch. In this instance, Danny Gold has not only the email showing that he did pitch them well in advance, but the fact is they named it literally the same thing. Like, dude, it's one thing if they said it's a good idea, let's do an episode about epidemics and stuff. But to literally use the same title and go after the same people is overt and brazen. It shows me that Vox doesn't care. They knew they would get called out for this. They knew Danny would notice. They don't care. Because Vox is one of those, what you call it, evil corporations. They say, if you're not, I'm not going to read the tag for it. Vox did not respond to a request for comment. Gold added that he had not heard from the higher-ups at Vox about the situation. He also clarified in subsequent tweets that the idea was not unsolicited. Cleo Abram, one of the people tagged in Gold's original tweet, did not respond either. Gold later wrote that she was just gathering the apps and that no one should send her aggressive messages. She's a producer for Vox. It was part of the hiring process for the role of season 2 producer, which aired on Netflix. And he says Netflix CEO Reed Hastings did not respond either. He said it's absurd to me how blatant this is and how people think they can get away with it. Ask for treatments during the hiring process from producers. Don't hire those producers. Then steal their work. People in charge just assume you'll keep your mouth shut. Don't ever. Bravo, good sir. Do not keep your mouth shut, and neither will I. Vox is one of these companies that pretends to be all about ethics and morals and social justice, but they are just a money machine. They are saying these things to manipulate you to generate clicks. They will steal from underneath you. They will steal from Danny Gold, a freelance producer who has very little hope of going up against a massive corporation, but he does have the court of public opinion. We shouldn't sit by and let these big companies just rip people off. I'm certainly not a fan of that, and I think most people would agree. Fortunately, he has the ability to tweet. We have the ability to amplify that. People on Twitter can retweet, and that could be enough pressure on the company to make them compensate and credit him for what was clearly his idea. But that's the game they play. Ideas can be powerful, but sometimes, a lot of people underestimate the value of an idea. Let me tell you a story. It's kind of a joke. An office worker, his printer stops working, right? And so all of his employees, the office managers, all of his employees are like, hey, the copying machine is broken. It's a big copying machine. We need to hire someone to repair it. Otherwise, we can't work. So the office manager calls a repairman. The repairman walks in, takes a look at it, feels around, draws an X on the side, pulls out a hammer, and whacks it. The machine kicks back on. The office manager's like, amazing, you fixed it. The repairman turns to the manager and says, that'll be $500. And the office manager says, $500 for what? All you did was hit it with the hammer. And the man says, no, hitting it with the hammer was free. Knowing where to hit it with the hammer costs $500. So that's typically used to explain how sometimes it might seem like something is an easy job or easy to come by, but the idea, the knowledge behind it it's particularly valuable. In this case, Danny had a good idea. They should have paid for it. But here's where it gets funny, okay? Vox is not innocent, okay? Nate Silver to Vox, stop stealing my charts from 2015. And it's an old story, but hold on. Nate Silver of 538 tweeted, yovox.com. Y'all should probably stop stealing people's charts without proper attribution. You do this all the time to 538 and others. Vox apparently, and in the past, has been called up by high-profile people for stealing other intellectual property. But now I bring you to the greatest part of this whole story. I got to admit, I really want to do this segment because I do not like the idea of these are evil companies, man. They, when I worked for Fusion, they said essentially to lie. Essentially, okay, because they didn't say, Tim, go lie. They were like, we want to side with the audience. And we all know what that meant. And I said, if that means it's a story that would be factually true but offensive, we don't cover it. And they said, yes, essentially, right? They said, yeah, I think that's fair. And so I was told, however I covered stuff, it had to be framed to side with the audience, regardless of whether it was right or wrong. But so that's why I wanted to cover this, because I can absolutely empathize with how Danny got ripped off here. And I think that's complete BS. There's a lot of people. There was a website once that talked about how these big digital companies would hire you, say, oh, send us an invoice and we'll pay you, and they never would. Okay, it's a chronic problem with these companies. But I'm going to do it. You're going to get mad at me. Danny Gold is his name, right? Gold. And Nate Silver. Isn't it funny? It's such a good story. So this is such an old story. It was never really a big deal. But gold and silver. had their intellectual property stolen by Vox. Isn't that, it's just a stupid pun. I don't know. I thought it was funny. Y'all probably are thinking I'm stupid for bringing it up, but isn't it kind of weird? But anyway, let me wrap this up. Vox should do the right thing. Vox should absolutely give him a producer credit, and they should absolutely compensate him. Like, I gotta be honest. Whereas Danny's normal fee would apply if they took his story, I think they should pay him 3 times damages for clearly taking his idea and running with it. To have someone come in for a job interview is to take their time. To then say, what's your ideas? What are your story pitches? Take your pitch, tell you no. That time you spent going there was work being done. The time you spent putting together the treatment was work being done. They brought you in, they took your product, they took your time, and they refused to pay. They should pay damages. Gold and silver. I thought it was funny. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.